The first moment when she came out and my husband confirmed, like, it's a girl.
And then having her come into the world and be lifted onto my chest and being elated and exhausted and relieved.
Birth is a powerful experience. Intense, beautiful, humbling. There's not much that can compare to the joy of bringing a new life into this world. But it also brings new responsibilities. And for moms especially, anxiety about, well, everything.
I remember being very frightened by my ability to take care of my daughter when she was born.
I didn't know how to get her to sleep. I always struggled with breastfeeding.
There was a lot of agony over whether or not my baby was getting the proper nutrition.
But I just felt for a really long time like I couldn't make her happy.
It had taken us over a year to get pregnant, and then here we are with our baby, and it was hard to care for this new little life.
With the start of every new little life, for parents, it can sometimes feel like the end of their own. It begins a new normal that, for all its joys, can be trying at times.
I remember saying tearfully to my husband, we wanted this so badly, because we had wanted a baby so badly, and we were in the thick of it now.
Babies are adorable for a reason, a biological reason. Their looks, their sounds, and even their scents trigger surges of hormones that get the love flowing. But biology isn't destiny. Sometimes it goes wrong or just isn't strong enough to help parents and babies bond. Sometimes things like harried work schedules, physical exhaustion, and even pre- or postpartum depression can get in the way. So what can we do? These days, people turn to parenting blogs, Instagram, and books for advice. But long before that, they had another resource. Spiritual traditions the world over offered advice and rituals to help new parents bond with and support their children, and support themselves through the stresses, anxieties, and depression that childbirth can bring. Challenges on whose other side joy can be seen.
I just remember thinking, oh, this is what's lovely, and kind of had this glimpse into what the future would be like with this child, and that it wouldn't just be, why isn't she sleeping, and why isn't she eating, and why is she crying, that there would be some happiness. My name is Rachel, and my daughter is 3.5 years old.
My name is Athika. I have 2 kids, aged 1 and 3.
My name is Eloise, and I have 2 kids, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old.
My name is Liz, and my kids are 3 and 5 years old.
And I'm Dave DeSteno. And this is Season 2 of How God Works, exploring the journey of life. We care for our children because we love them. But sometimes we love them because we care for them. This is something the very wise psychologist Alison Gopnik often says. And as a father and a psychologist myself, it makes a lot of sense. The simple act of physically caring for children can make us value them more. But so too can rituals of caring. There's a ton of research showing that if we put effort or money into something, a job, a degree, or a relationship, we come to value it more. Our brains assume it's more important. Why else would we have put so much effort into it? These rituals of caring can start with a simple act of reframing. So instead of seeing another cry or tug on your arm as a burden or an annoyance, what if we see it as something to cherish?
Amai is this really interesting concept. It's about caregiving. It's about caretaking. You can give amai, but you can also receive amai. It's like benevolent dependence.
That's my friend and colleague, Lisa Feldman Barrett. Lisa is a neuroscientist who has done some of the most pioneering work on emotions and how they're constructed differently across cultures. And what she's talking about here is amai, the emotion felt between Japanese moms and their children. It's that feeling when you're busy, but you see your child looking up at you, wanting to spend time together. So no matter how stressed you are, you put down whatever you're doing to cuddle, play, or otherwise take care of your little one. That feeling of cherishing and being cherished when the two of you are together, that's amai. And while we in the US can recognize that feeling, we don't have a word for it, precisely because it's just not as common here.
In the United States in particular, the only words that we have for that kind of caretaking have a very negative connotation, like codependence. We often don't think of ourselves as being entwined in a social fabric with other people. You'll hear people say things like, I came into this world by myself and I'm going to leave this world by myself. And I think, oh, you didn't have a mother who birthed you? You were birthed in a test tube? I think you didn't come into the world by yourself, you know? But most people are unaware of this intricate kind of interwoven nature, that we're social animals and that we're the caretakers of each other's nervous systems. Most people are unaware of this, but in some cultures it's more present.
Japan is one of those cultures. The bond between Japanese mothers and their children is legendary in the anthropological literature because it's among the closest in terms of caregiving, time spent together, physical contact, and empathy there is. By one estimate, Japanese mothers spend about 2 hours per week away from their babies on average, while in the US, it's closer to 24. So what helps the Japanese feel amai? Part is cultural, but part also comes from the rituals of Shinto, one of Japan's main religions. All religions have a ritual to welcome a new baby, but Shinto has many during the early years of childhood, and especially during the first year. In fact, the first ritual takes place before a baby is even born, when a beautiful sash is placed around a pregnant mother's belly to protect the child and symbolize the start of caretaking. On the 7th day after birth, there's a naming ceremony. At 1 month of age, a trip to the temple with family for the baby's first blessing. At 4 months, a celebration of the child's first bite of food. During the first March or May, depending upon whether the baby is a boy or a girl, there's a ritual where the children receive gifts and the house is elaborately decorated to show gratitude for their health. And then there's another big party for the first birthday. These are important milestones for many families, but the difference in Shinto is that these celebrations are ritualized. They take a lot of planning, dedication, and provide a public expression of just how special a new child is. At a psychological level, that effort and expense translates into more value, or love. And the more special or celebratory an event is, the more memorable it is too. Ritualizing the celebrations makes that effort harder to forget. And if parents can't forget it, their brain's accounting machinery doesn't either. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make caring for a child sound like Econ 101. But research shows that is the way the mind works. But to work, rituals like these don't have to come from Shinto. They can be celebrations of anything during the first years of a child's life. The trick, though, is to do rituals often. First smiles, first successful crawls, half birthdays. We do that one in my house. The main point, and what Shinto does really well, is to front-load celebrations. Every piece of psychological research we have suggests this will make you feel even closer to your children. And anything that bumps up those feelings, even just a little bit, makes you more happy and willing to cherish them and do whatever they need, even when you're dead on your feet. What babies really need most, though, is to trust that their parents are there for them. Those cherishing feelings are there for one big purpose from your child's point of view.
You're reliably, basically, creating conditions of comfort, reliable comfort. Someone is there or something is there to give you comfort when you need it. It's also
someone you can trust.
Yeah, that you can trust.
And depend on.
You can trust and depend on.
But the time we spend with our infants isn't just to take care of their physical needs. It's to help their emotional development too. To help them learn how to begin to comfort themselves, every parent's dream. And here, Lisa says creating a different type of ritual for your child, one based on a small set of cues, can help.
Regardless of what a brain is conscious of, that is right now, for example, you and I are talking to each other, so we're listening to each other's voices, and you and I can see each other. So we're also looking at each other's faces. But our brains right now are actually encoding an entire ensemble of sensory cues. They're not the focus of our attention, all of them, but they're all being, encoded to some extent. They're being learned to some extent, okay? And the same thing is true for an infant. So, for example, holding a baby against your chest, the baby can feel your heartbeat and you can feel the baby's heartbeat. And for some babies, skin to skin contact is a great way to calm them down. It doesn't work for all babies, but it works for some babies. For some babies, just singing to them, they hear the sound of your voice and that's enough to calm them down. When my daughter was born and I was trying to teach her when to sleep longer and when to have a nap and when to sleep through the night, I decided to use lots of cues to try to teach her that distinction. So we would use different blankets and we would have a different ritual, but like I would read a different book. Do I know for sure that this, helped her? Not for sure, but the research would suggest that you're creating an ensemble of cues, and that helps the infant learn what the rules are essentially for regulating I'm regulating her physical state along with a set of cues. And eventually her brain learns those cues well enough that when the cues are present, she will be able to regulate her own state in that way.
Which predicts a lot of downstream
Exactly,
success, I would
exactly,
imagine.
exactly.
But you hit on something important there, right? Which I think is, and we talk about a lot on the show, which is basically creating a ritual out of it. And not in this case, it's not a religious ritual. But I'll see pediatricians do this all the time. They'll tell people if you're having trouble bonding with your baby or calming the baby, create a ritual. And oftentimes, as you said, it involves skin to skin contact or massage, because in a lot of babies that works, but not all. But the trick is to find that ritual that works for you and to make it regular, right?
Even that's
Yeah.
what religious rituals are for. They're for you're regulating your body. You're learning to regulate your physical state in line with a set of values and practices that have meaning in a particular cultural context. A brain's most important job is regulating the systems of its body. If what's happening in bonding is that you're regulating the child's body, because the child can't do it for herself. Her brain isn't equipped yet. But eventually that regularity that you provide, she'll learn those patterns and then she'll be able to eventually slowly come to do it for herself.
We all know babies need love to thrive, but sometimes it can be hard to give that love, to meet their bodily and emotional needs if you're feeling like you can't even meet your own, when something like depression gets in the way. One of the problems some new mothers face is postpartum depression. For many, it starts soon after birth, but for some, it even starts during pregnancy, where it's called prenatal depression. And one of the reasons likely has to do with the strain pregnancy, childbirth, and nursing takes on their bodies. As Lisa said, one of our brain's main jobs is managing the energy needs of our bodies, something she likes to call running a body budget. And what new research is showing is that our minds don't only affect our bodies, but our bodies can affect our minds. When our energy managing system breaks down, when our body's resources are depleted and there's little opportunity to rest and replenish them, that's when depression can show up.
And, it's not budgeting money, it's budgeting salt and glucose and oxygen and, all the things that are required to keep yourself alive and well. And you can talk about deposits and withdrawals, right? So you can eat, you can sleep, those are deposits. When someone gives you a hug, it turns out you get a metabolic savings. If you do something hard with someone that you trust and that you love, it's metabolically less costly for you. And so in depression, they have a bankrupt body budget. Their energy regulation is disrupted. And as a consequence, they're fatigued. They have difficulty concentrating. They don't learn new things very well. And they're really, really miserable. They're distressed because of this budgeting problem.
So let me ask you this then. One of the other things that it seems that is very metabolically costly would be childbirth, having a baby, and then nursing that baby.
You bet.
Because it's a huge cost. We see the stats vary, but about 15% of women on average have some type of postpartum depression. And I can see how that exactly ties into the metabolic cost.
The reason why is that other people metaphorically can make deposits and withdrawals in our own body budgets, and we do the same for them.
She wouldn't take a bottle when my husband was watching her.
Here's Liz again.
So he would pick her up from daycare and drive her up to my work, and then I would take a lunch break every day and nurse her on my lunch break. And I was still pumping, even though she wouldn't really drink milk from a bottle, out of the hopes that she would eventually figure it out, and also because I didn't want to lose my milk supply.
And when you have more than one child, it's not just your and your baby's nervous systems that are involved. Now it's 3 of you, meaning your budget is declining even more quickly. Atika was managing a toddler while pregnant with her second child, all during COVID.
It was really different because I think that throughout the pregnancy, when you have a toddler, or just like a child of any age, your responsibility as a parent can sometimes, overshadow in a way. And so I was so focused on her and taking care of her. And she did have a lot of demands and needs because she wasn't even 2 years old. After he was born, it was really tough having to spend so much time away from her. I think that was tough for both of us. And I remember a specific moment when I was trying to get to the park with my husband and my daughter with the baby, not even a week or 2 after he was born. And I remember getting myself ready, getting the baby ready. And by the time we were ready to go out the door, I could barely even think about going down 2 flights of stairs, let alone down the street to the park. Even though that was a really tough moment, I felt really defeated in the moment. I think I also realized that I had to kind of take things slow, and that taking care of the baby and myself was the priority in that moment.
Here's Eloise again.
The idea of like a 4th trimester. And I read somewhere that ideally a woman should not leave for 90 days and should just be fed and create like a womb in her house that she and her baby will be in. That felt like something I wanted to recreate. And I'm not saying I did. I don't think I did with either child, but I did really just want to be snuggled up in the newborn phase and be at home and be taken care of. Hot showers after getting the baby to sleep at night were incredible. Your body is aching and you don't even feel in your body yet, so hot showers were the best.
Many religions and cultures prescribe these periods of rest before and after pregnancy. So the I Ching has the Zhuyozi, which is, sitting the month. In Islam and in Hindu practices, they have this as well, where before and after childbirth, when this is done ideally, women are given a period of rest. They have people who are massaging them, waiting on them, bringing them food, giving them quiet time to be with their baby and learn. In Christianity in Europe, many centuries ago, they had this idea as well, this lying in period, but it's completely vanished. But in the moment of those deep metabolic costs of child rearing and lactating and nursing, not only having someone to give you the emotional support that adds to your body budget, but to actually supply the time, the food, the physical supports, to me, makes a lot of sense. Now, but again, if you feel comfortable, the term postpartum confinement is a problem because in some religions, there's this idea attached to it that the woman is unclean and there's this shame element. And so, that is not what I see as beneficial here. But the idea of having a period where you're surrounded by friends and family who support you, who give you that time with your child, and also to support you in those moments of some of the highest metabolic costs of your life, makes sense to me why when it's accepted and valued, it reduces depression. And so when I looked at the data on this, I thought I was going to find something amazing, which is that this should reliably predict reduced postpartum depression. But what I found was something very interesting. And what you find when you look at these periods of rest or postpartum confinement, as they're sometimes called, is whether they reduce depression or not depends on 2 things: did the woman want it, right? You can think of a lot of young women who don't want a period of rest. They want to get back to work. But the biggest predictor is, were you doing it with your family or with your in-laws? If you were doing it with your in-laws, depression did not get any better. In fact, it got worse. But if you were doing it with your family or people that you cared about, you could trust, who were reliable supports, it actually did reduce postpartum depression.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So we are the caretakers of each other's nervous systems. And there's a huge literature on social support, right? Which shows that feeling supported by someone else is an excellent predictor of recovery and resilience to physical illness. Similarly, the presence of others who you do not feel supported by is actually a burden. It doesn't just have no effect, it actually makes things worse.
The brilliance of Taoist, Hindu, and other postpartum rituals of rest is that they provide time and comfort. Time for mothers to spend undisturbed with a new baby, and comfort provided by people they trust to help their bodies slowly adjust to major metabolic changes. By doing this, they're helping mothers bond with their babies and warding off postpartum depression. They even benefit new fathers and help them care for babies too, because there's a link between postpartum depression in mothers and fathers. But what do you do if you don't have a ready-made support system? Unfortunately, it happens a lot. Sometimes because people are living far away from friends or family, and sometimes because the situation they're living in is a dire one.
I'm in Northeast Tennessee, the Appalachian Highlands, but we have a very high drug use population. And this does cause many moms to be single. It also causes the whole family system is in that culture. And so the support that you would get from your family might also be broken.
That's Andi Clements, a professor of psychology at East Tennessee State University. She's been studying the impact that religion has on pregnancy and health in Appalachia for many years. And what she's found is that religion, both belief in God and membership in communities of faith, can sometimes offer that trust and support new mothers need, even under the harshest of conditions.
I was looking particularly at attention deficit disorder. And so it was much more common in children born to moms who had extreme stress in pregnancy. And we now know that that is related to lots of other things. But early childhood adversity of many kinds tends to predict this inattention, difficulty learning, poor planning, poor executive control, things like that.
But then Andi noticed something interesting in her research. Some women who had little or no social support, struggled with drugs, had all the variables that should lead to a high-stress pregnancy, weren't any more stressed than some women who had no risk factors. What these women had that the others in their situation didn't was God. Or, more accurately, trust God would be there to support and guide them during and after their pregnancy.
I started studying what is called surrender to God. So it's not just like, I go to church, but it was actually, I am surrendering my will to God.
So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of surrender, as you say. And so from my understanding, right, surrendering to God is the sense that I, the person, am not in control of everything in the world. It doesn't mean, oh, I don't care, I'm not going to try and make a good decision, I'm putting everything in God's hands. I'm going to do the best that I can, make the best decision, do the best that I can. And then I'm going to, in some ways, offer it up. I'm going to trust that someone else, some entity, some divine being will help. And to me, what that suggests is it makes these parents not continually run simulations in their head of, what about this? Or ruminate, what about that? Or did I do the right thing? Or is this the right medicine? Is this the right school? Is this the right choice? Is that what you mean by surrender?
Yeah, it is. There's some subtle differences in the way you say this. There's what's called deferring, which is, well, God's going to do what he's going to do anyway. There's nothing I can do, kind of a helpless surrender. But what I'm talking about are a volitional surrenders. Surrendering to God is a pretty rare commodity, even in religious communities. So like maybe 25% of a religious community and the teens and the general population, like I trust this being to know more than I do, to have more control than I do, and I'm going to willingly give up that control. And that, I think, is a very different thing, because it's not just the letting go, it's the letting go but knowing someone else is taking care of it. It's almost like when you have a babysitter and you go take a nap. It's like I can trust that the baby is cared for while I take this nap. I can sleep peacefully because the baby's cared for, rather than I don't know if they're going to be okay when I wake up. It's a very different kind of thing. And so it's that volitional giving up that seems to be the thing that really lowers that stress level. So these are those intrinsically religious folks. It is who I am. It's what I do. It's what I live.
Have you seen any evidence of that in terms of benefits for either postpartum depression or drug use around childbirth or any of these related health outcomes, that it really matters, besides the issue of surrender, how engaged people are with their faith?
Well, I have, to an extent. One of the questions that we also ask is how often someone attends religious services. So, is it once a year or a couple of times a year, once a month? Is it once a week or more? And those people who identify as surrendered and also are somehow connected with the faith community once a week or more are the qualitatively different group. And we had a follow-up study to the stress study where we were looking at drug use in women. And it was a large longitudinal study of about 1,000 people. And we had a social support measure, and there was an effect of the religiousness over and above just social. It wasn't just the social support. The women that said that that answered positively to the surrender question, and they don't have to say always, because none of us always do much of anything. So if it's like most of the time or always to those two surrender questions, that I will almost always go with God's will, and then attended some sort of service once a week or more, or some kind of religious activity once a week or more, and it predicted very low depression rates, almost used no substances, no illicit use, almost no alcohol use, very little even prescription medication use, very different from the rest of the population. It's like these are different people.
Whether you put your trust in God, a spouse, or a friend, it will help ease your anxieties as long as you feel you can depend on them. Remember, we're all in this together. We all start out cute but helpless. And for our parents, it's something they never forget. Here's Eloise again.
It's such a personal, unique experience, and it rocks your world when a baby comes into your life and you have to care for it, and it changes everything. And it's not unique at all. It's crazy to me that there are just millions of babies that are born every day, and that people around the world are just going through this process all the time. And there's nothing special about it except that it's the most special and amazing thing for you to go through.
That's life in a nutshell. On the one hand, it's nothing special. Millions of people go through similar experiences every day. But at the same time, life is amazing. Your life, to you and those who love you, is special. And since, as far as we know, you only get one, it's important to make the best of it, to enjoy every moment you can. When it comes to starting a new family, that means giving you and your little one the best start possible. The wisdom religions give us here boils down to two things: trust and comfort. Just as babies need to rely on parents for support and comfort, parents can benefit from relying on other people. Before, and especially after childbirth, assuming a new mother welcomes it, create a safe, even a sacred space where the new family can spend time together while passing on the mundane aspects of life, cooking, cleaning, etc., to family and friends. Even better, celebrate new mothers. Dote on them. They've been supporting a new life for 9 months in their womb. Now it's their body's time to heal. And when it comes to bonding with and cherishing your new little one, plan rituals big and small. Big to celebrate those milestones that usually pass by with just recording a date in the scrapbook. First smile, first tooth, first steps. Small to help your little one know she's safe and loved. Daily story reading, cuddle time, and the like. Doing this will strengthen those bonds. It'll help you cherish your child. It'll bring on feelings like amai, whatever your cultural or faith background. Next time on How God Works, when your sweet little ones grow and are spending all their day gaining knowledge in school, we'll look at how spiritual practices can help them gain something else: good character. How God Works is hosted and written by me, Dave DeSteno. Our senior producer is Josie Holtzman of Future Projects. Associate producer is Sophie Eisenberg. Our executive producer is Genevieve Sponsler. Music and post-production mix and master by Merritt Jacob. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzalez. This podcast was also made possible with support from the John Templeton Foundation. Special thanks to Ataka Kaki, Rachel Hearn, Eloise Meltzer, and Liz Iverson for sharing their stories and for birthing and raising their children. We here at How God Works wish you all the best.